Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading William and Ellen Craft's Running a Thousand Miles for Freedom. We are still in part 1, so this is part 1, video 5, and let's get cracking. We thought of plan after plan, but they all seemed crowded with insurmountable difficulties. We knew it was unlawful for any public conveyance to take us as passengers without our master's consent. We were also perfectly aware of the startling fact that had we left without this consent, the professional slave hunters would have soon had their ferocious bloodhounds baying on our track, and in a short time we would have been dragged back to slavery, not to fill the more favorable situations which we had just left, but to be separated for life and put to the very meanest and most laborious drudgery, or else have been tortured to death as examples in order to strike terror into the hearts of others and thereby prevent them from even attempting to escape from their cruel taskmasters. It is a fact worthy of remark that nothing seems to give the slaveholders so much pleasure as the catching and torturing of fugitives. They had much rather take the keen and poisonous lash and with it cut their poor trembling victims to atoms than allow one of them to escape to a free country and expose the infamous system from which he fled. The greatest excitement prevails at a slave hunt. The slaveholders and their hired ruffians appear to take more pleasure in this inhuman pursuit than English sportsmen do in chasing a fox or stag. Therefore, knowing what we should have been compelled to suffer if caught and taken back, we were more than anxious to hit upon a plan that would lead us safely to the land of liberty. But, after puzzling our brains for years, we were reluctantly driven to the sad conclusion that it was almost impossible to escape from slavery in Georgia and travel 1,000 miles across the slave states. We therefore resolved to get the consent of our owners to be married, settle down in slavery, and endeavor to make ourselves as comfortable as possible under that system, but at the same time effort to keep our dim eyes steadily fixed upon the glimmering hope of liberty, and earnestly pray God mercifully to assist us to escape from our unjust thraldom. Ooh, thraldom. You don't hear thraldom every day. And before I keep going, so Ellen didn't want to get married because she didn't want to have any babies. Let's just keep that simmering. We were married and prayed and toiled on till December 1848, at which time, as I have stated, a plan suggested itself that proved quite successful, and in 8 days after it was first thought of, we were free from the horrible trammels of slavery and glorifying God who had brought us safely out of a land of bondage. Knowing that slaveholders have the privilege of taking their slaves to any part of the country they think proper, it occurred to me that, as my wife was nearly white, I might get her to disguise herself as an invalid gentleman and assume to be my master while I could attend as his slave, and that in this manner we might effect our escape. I don't know if you were with me when we read Clotel by William Wells Brown. That was published in 1853, I believe. William and Ellen Craft's escape was in 1848. And in William Wells Brown's novel, Clotel, the escape was the exact same as what William and Ellen Craft did in 1848. And their escape was very publicized. It wasn't like they escaped and nobody knew about it. They escaped and it was, had social media been around, it would have been all over Twitter and Instagram and wherever else people are putting out their messages. Okay, so I'll continue. After I thought of the plan, I suggested it to my wife, but at first she shrank from the idea. She thought it was almost impossible for her to assume that disguise and travel a distance of 1,000 miles across the slave states. However, on the other hand, she also thought of her condition. She saw that the laws under which we lived did not recognize her to be a woman, but a mere chattel, to be bought and sold or otherwise dealt with as her owner might see fit. And we can use our imaginations to know what otherwise dealt with meant. Therefore, the more she contemplated her helpless condition, the more anxious she was to escape from it. So she said, "I think it is almost too much for us to undertake. However, I feel that God is on our side, and with his assistance, notwithstanding all the difficulties, we shall be able to succeed. Therefore, if you will purchase the disguise, I will try to carry out the plan. Oh, yeah. But after I concluded to purchase the disguise, I was afraid to go to anyone to ask him to sell me the articles. It was unlawful in Georgia for a white man to trade with slaves without the master's consent. But notwithstanding this, many persons will sell a slave any article that he can get the money to buy. Not that they sympathize with the slave, but merely because his testimony is not admitted in court against a free white person. Oh, I will knowingly sell this to you, that you are a slave, and when I go to court for it, I will deny the whole thing because you're a slave and you can't testify in court. What a beautiful system for the landed white males! I see why they loved it. Therefore, with little difficulty, I went to different parts of town at odd times and purchased things piece by piece, except the trousers, which she found necessary to make, and took them home to the house where my wife resided. She, being a lady's maid and a favorite slave in the family, was allowed a little room to herself, and amongst other pieces of furniture which I had made in my overtime was a chest of drawers. So when I took the articles home, she locked them up carefully in these drawers. No one about the premises knew that she had anything of the kind. So when we fancied we had everything ready, the time was fixed for the flight. But we knew it would not do to start off without first getting our master's consent to be away for a few days. Had we left without this, they would soon have had us back into slavery, and probably we should never have got another fair opportunity of even attempting to escape. Some of the best slaveholders would sometimes give their favorite slaves a few days' holiday at Christmas time, so after no little amount of perseverance on my wife's part, she obtained a pass from her mistress allowing her to be away for a few days. Oh my. Okay, so she obtained a pass. We've talked a little bit about racial passing, where a person who is legally or socially or however of one race passes as a person for another race. And that term comes from the idea of slaves carrying a pass that allowed them to go where they wanted to go. In this instance, the white skin becomes a pass that allows the slave to go where she wants to go. So we have a slave who looks like she's white, but is a slave and so is therefore black, has gotten a pass from her master to be away, and she is using that pass and her skin as a pass to pass as somebody of a different race. Oh! I love it. All right. Where am I? Okay, some of the best slaveholders, blah, blah, blah. So, after no little amount of perseverance on my wife's part, she obtained a pass from her mistress, allowing her to be away for a few days. The cabinet maker with whom I worked gave me a similar paper, but said that he needed my services very much, and wished me to return as soon as the time granted was up. I thanked him kindly, but somehow I have not been able to make it convenient to return yet. And as the free air of good old England agrees so well with my wife and our dear little ones, as well as with myself, it is not at all likely we shall return at present to the peculiar institution of chains and stripes. On reaching my wife's cottage, she handed me her pass and I showed mine, but at that time neither of us were able to read them. It is not only unlawful for slaves to be taught to read, but in some of the states there are heavy penalties attached, such as fines and imprisonment, which will be vigorously enforced upon anyone who is humane enough to violate this so-called law. The following case will serve to show how persons are treated in the most enlightened slaveholding community. Let's see. You know what? It's kind of a short reading today, but let's go ahead and stop there. It's kind of a clean place to stop. So we'll stop here. We'll pick it up next time. We will let the idea of racial passing and passes that slaves carried to go to and fro and color identity We will let all of that simmer and marinate until next time. This is Reading with Rashonda, and I'm Rashonda Cade.